views on the quantum of QE tapering? And do you see further incremental pressure on emerging markets and Asian currencies?
I think that's a good question. Essentially, I think what the market would be most happy with would be a non-farm payrolls number of around 180,000. I think that would show that the jobs market is sufficiently robust to continue growing, so no fears there, but not so aggressive such that we would see aggressive action by the Fed. I think there's a growing sense that the quantum of tapering may not be as much as originally anticipated. I think if they came in around the 5 billion area, we would see a positive reaction in emerging markets. But I think the underlying withdrawal of liquidity cannot be escaped. And to that extent, I think pressure on EM remains.
What are your views on emerging markets versus developed markets?
Well, actually, EM started to underperform DM, particularly in Asia, as far back as mid-2011. So the gradual rotation from emerging markets to particularly the United States has been going for quite a while. And I can see why. You know, the earnings profile and earnings revision profile of, for example, the States is much superior to what we're seeing in Asia, and I suspect that will continue. So I don't think it's a function of sell on the rumour and buy on the fact. I think the underlying tone of earnings, of fundamentals, and frankly of technicals also remains supportive of DM for the time being.
Differential between US and Indian real interest rates contracted recently. When do we see further debt inflows to India?
Look, I don't think it's a function of absolute differentials. I think it's really more a function of the underlying health of the economy. There has not seemed to be, I think in investors' eyes, a credible policy initiative implemented as yet to address some of these problems. Previously or prior to the Lehman crisis, for example, India's external financing was essentially FDI and reasonably stable commercial loans. It's subsequently been replaced by bond inflows and particularly equity inflows. And of course, that's hot money. And until investors see some sort of credible policy initiative with a political support to back it, I suspect pressure will remain on outflows and frankly, the external account position.
Inflationary expectations in the Indian economy still remain high. However, do you think that the RBI should still take a stance and reverse the recent liquidity tightening steps?
Look, I think that what they're doing at the moment is reasonably, I think, positive macroprudential policy, but it lacks, I think, the political underpinnings to reasonably prosecute and implement. For example, with elections due in May, it's unlikely that we see some credible austerity measures necessary to rein in the fiscal deficit, or at least until afterwards. And certainly that's a view the rating agencies are taking. The rating agencies want really to remain on hold until the elections and see what new policies are implemented before they make a decision. My view is that whoever gets into power is still going to face these very intractable problems and some very difficult and decisions to be made with a lot of political will.
Do you think the RBI should cut interest rates and focus on growth rather than on the rupee?
I think they're going to remain on hold for a time being, actually. I don't think they want to loosen materially and unleash inflation. At the same time, I think they're going to have to remain cautious about growth and be as supportive as they can.